This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed, and therefore should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discretion, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn of through this show.
You're listening to Let's Get Metaphysical, the podcast that goes beyond the tip of the iceberg to explore the elusive, extraordinary, and mystical phenomena occurring all around us all the time.
In this episode, Ren speaks with psychic medium Debra Diamond.
I'm Renata Maniaci. Debra Diamond is a psychic medium who provides insights and guidance into financial, career, health, family, relationship, and spiritual issues. Debra is a former Wall Street money manager, CNBC commentator, and former professor at Johns Hopkins University. She is the author of Life After Near Death: Miraculous Stories of Healing and Transformation in the Extraordinary Lives of People with Newfound Powers. She earned an MBA in finance from the George Washington University and a PhD from the Esoteric Interfaith Theological Seminary. She is a public speaker and conducts classes and workshops. She is dedicated to the empowerment of her clients. I first met Debra Diamond at the Pathways Natural Living Expo back in 2014. I went to a talk that she was giving, and it was my first time hearing personal experiences from a psychic medium. The reason I was really drawn into Debra is because she is very matter-of-fact, very grounded, and just has this whole background of experience and things that I can identify with given my own background. She's very no nonsense, and at the same time has a beautiful way of explaining how these metaphysical things and psychic experiences began to happen with her. I gained so much from her talk at that expo that I decided to go and take a one-day intuitive development course that she was giving, which was also really wonderful. After that, I had my first psychic reading with Debra, and I've since had probably 3 or 4 in the last 4 years. Debra works out of Maryland, and I spoke with her over a Zoom call. We were having a little bit of difficulty with the connection, so please excuse us if it sounds a little rough in spots. So, are you ready? Then let's get meta. I'm here today with Debra Diamond. Thank you, Debra, so much for joining us via Zoom today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. I wanted just to start off by telling folks how I met you. We met about 4 years ago. I came to listen to a talk that you were giving at the Pathways Expo in Maryland, and I just love what you had to say. I really had resonated with your story a lot, coming from the background that you did and then getting into what you're doing now, kind of from a very logical background. I resonated with you so much, and you were really the first psychic medium that I ever saw and continued to see. So I'm just so grateful that you're here talking with us today.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. You know, I do this because I like to help people. So when I get feedback that I have helped people, that's what it's all about, right? And, you know, my background is similar to yours. You know, I came out of a left brain kind of academic and success-oriented background. And, you know, the idea was not to grow up and become a psychic medium. But life does funny things along the way. You know, while you're planning on doing one thing, sometimes other things happen. This is what happened to me, and it's been great. It was not what I planned, but it's been great. And of course, I'm grateful to everybody that I work with because, you know, if you're a teacher, you learn a lot from your students. And it's also gratifying to know that I can help people because, you know, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, but I came from a background where I worked on Wall Street and I wasn't ever sure that I was helping anybody there. So, you know, you help them make money, but that's a different thing. So anyway, but I'm happy to be here today. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to know you and to watch your growth and development.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I can rest assured that you have helped me. I still listen to the very first, I think we've done at least 3 readings together, if not more, over the past couple of years. But even that first one, I still go back and listen to sometimes. And there's just specific things that you brought through that have really
just happened. And we're kind of like a path along the way for me. And it really opened my eyes to what a psychic and a medium is. But I'll let you talk more about that. I'd like to start off by asking you, please tell us about a metaphysical experience that you've had. And it could be your first experience, or it could be any experience that you've had that you would like to share with us today.
Well, they do happen. I mean, people don't talk about them, but most people have them. You'll appreciate this. I read a story in the Wall Street Journal, of all places. It had statistics, something like 45% of people have said that they have a metaphysical or transformative experience that influenced their life. So, it's just not something that people feel comfortable talking about, but clearly it happens a lot. And, I read for a lot of people and I hear about their experiences. For me, the experience that I talk about a lot is the one that put me on this path to becoming a psychic and a medium. And, as you know, I used to be a money manager. The experience that I had that led me on this path was unexpected. I had abilities, but I didn't know that they were psychic and mediumship type abilities. I just knew that I always knew things. And it wasn't until 2008 when I went to an intuition development class in New York to tune up what I thought was good intuition that I had a profound experience. And this was something that happened in a seance that took place in the class. I was going for intuition development, not for a seance, but the teacher decided we were going to do a seance as one of our exercises. I wasn't real keen on it. I was afraid, to do a seance. Everything I knew about seances sounded pretty scary. But we went ahead and did it in the class, and I just assured myself that I would participate, but nothing would happen, and then we go on to the next exercise. That's not what happened. I meditated. I came out of the meditation. Teacher said, "Does anybody see anything?" And I looked around the room and everyone was looking at each other. And I raised my hand and she said, "Yes, Deborah, what do you see?" And I said, "I see about 50 people." I was seeing people who had passed, who were from my family, people who had passed, who were related to people in the room. I didn't know that yet. And then miscellaneous other people who were kind of walking through. So it was one of these profound, very profound, transformative experiences. I was not going for this. It shook me up. It took me a long time to incorporate all this into my life. And I did eventually. It took me some time, and it included going to Taos, New Mexico to live for a while until I could get comfortable with, the energy that I was given and working with it. And now I'm comfortable with it. And actually now I think I'm normal, which just goes to show how far I've come, because, I have to remind myself that other people don't think this is normal. Right. But, I'm used to it now. It's been a gift. It's a gift to help other people. The reality is that there's so much that goes on that we don't understand. There's a whole invisible world that most people don't see or interact with. Maybe they interact with it a little bit, but most people don't understand it or see it. And here on Earth, most people think that what you see is what is. What's in the material world is what you see, and that's as far as it goes. But there's so much more that goes on that we don't understand. It needs to be explored further, and it needs to be, I think, used to our best ability and incorporated into our lives.
That's excellent. I love that story. And for everyone listening, that's the story that made me want to work with you, Deborah. It was just like, wow, that's incredible. And you weren't looking for it. It just happened. It's a beautiful story. So what is a psychic or medium? I think you go by both. And how do they work?
All mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. And psychics are different than mediums. Psychics are able to go out into the universe and log on to sort of a energetic internet and pick up information about a client's, let's say, health, relationships, maybe their job, money, family, issues that all of us here deal with. That's what a psychic does. A medium connects with people who have passed over. So that's different than a psychic. And in order to connect with people who've passed, you have to be able to go higher. Think of it in terms of vibration, or, if we were a transistor radio, we have to go to a higher channel to pick up that information from somebody who's passed over. So not all psychics are able to do that. All mediums can get psychic information because mediums are used to operating at a higher level. But not all psychics are mediums. Not all psychics are able to retrieve information from those who've passed. So, they're really two different things. I don't know how it works. I know it does.
Right.
But I can't tell you how it works. I know that I just kind of have to get into a quiet space and prepare myself. And then I kind of tune in. And the information, once the information starts to come in, it just begins to flow. So the universe just seems to know where to go to, bring up just the right information.
Sure. So you kind of get yourself in a space, you prepare for it to happen, and you kind of tune in, and then information starts to come, or that's how it works for you.
At this stage, it's fairly seamless. I don't have to prepare that much, but because you've had readings, it just takes me a second or so to get into that space. I open the door, and then when the door is open, the information starts to flow in. There are other people who spend lots of time preparing for readings, and they pray beforehand, or they ask for assistance, or they do something very quiet for a while. Everybody has their own process. I don't really have to do that. That's just not how I work. It just sort of comes in. I turn on a switch and it comes in. And when a reading is over, too, the switch goes off. So that's something that's important for people to know, because people who've never had readings don't really understand that, number one, psychics and mediums are channels. So that means this is not my information. It's just flowing through me. I'm the channel. I don't remember any of it when a reading is over. I actually got an email the other day from someone asking me about a reading I had done 6 months ago. And they had a question about something about the reading. And it's like, I barely remember who they are, and I don't remember anything about the reading. So it's not like the linear world where, I can go back and look at my notes, and it's just not like that. The information flows through, and when the reading is over, the door's closed, and that's it. It's gone. I don't remember anything, and that's actually a good thing, because I, don't really want to be remembering everybody's readings. And I think for client confidentiality, that's best anyway, right? Yeah. So, but people, often email me and say, remember you told me this? And I'm like, actually, no. And it's not me telling them. It's just, I'm just the vessel.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that, because I remember you telling me that. I think actually the first time I worked with you was I took one of your developing intuition classes. And I do remember you explaining that. You said mediums are folks who can communicate with humans who have passed. Is there a different word, or is it the same word for folks who can communicate with beings that maybe aren't human or were not human at one time?
I think it all falls in the same bucket. When I read for people and I can bring in someone from their family who's passed, I might also bring in an entity from someplace else. All of those individuals or beings are someplace out there on the spectrum. And because I can go to a fairly high level, I'm able to tune in. And so that would include, people who've passed, what some people call aliens. And, when I say aliens, I don't mean people with egg-shaped heads and green faces and 3 eyes, but entities that, we don't know exactly, they're not from here. That would include guides and angels, master guides and all of that. So I'm able to tune in to all of those. Now, I can't tell you if other mediums can do that, because I just don't know. Everybody's different, but I can. So oftentimes when I'm reading for someone, I'm able to communicate with their guides or their angels, or there are lots of people who are very intrigued and somehow connected with the universe or with space, and seem to have connections out there. And so I'm, oftentimes able to connect with their connections. It sounds easy, right? It's like anything else. If you're trained for it, this is what you do. If you're a doctor, that's what you do. If you're a lawyer, that's what you do. So, I'm trained for this. Now, not all people who are doing this are trained. I should say that. And that's good to know, because today there are lots and lots of fairs and expos and all kinds of activities, and they've really blossomed. When I first started doing this, there weren't as many, and there weren't as many participants, and it was just very different. But I noticed that now there are lots of expos with a lot of healers and readers and all this. And many of these people I don't think are trained. So that means, I remember talking to somebody at one of these who was giving readings, and I asked this person what kind of, what had been their training. And they said they read a Doreen Virtue angel book. So I think there's a lot of that.
Sure.
And that's fine. People want to educate themselves and they want to do this work, and I think that's all fine. But If you're someone who's on the receiving end of a reading, you need to be aware that, not all readings are created equal. Some people have more training than others. And the training is important to know because there's a lot involved in these, in these readings. You have to be careful what you say to people. I know sometimes when someone comes to me for a reading and they've never had one before, they're frightened because they don't know what's going to happen and they think maybe something bad is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I just put it out there that I never receive any information that's bad. I always ask, for the greatest good. But there are people out there who do give people, bad information. So, you just have to be careful. I think it's like any other profession, really.
Right. Thank you for those distinctions. The last couple of years, I've been navigating this too. Just like in any profession, there are bad doctors, there are bad lawyers. Of course, there are bad psychics and there are bad mediums. Or, maybe I shouldn't be using the term bad, right? But there's different levels. And mediumship in this kind of stuff is no exception. There's different levels of expertise, and you're certainly up there, very up there in terms of the level. So you told us a little bit about your story that I love so much with you in the class. So what was the jump? At what point did you leave what you were doing with money managing and move into this? How did that work for you?
When I look back on it, I realized I was already kind of drifting towards this. So it wasn't a specific incident. Of course, that, what happened in that class was an inciting incident, but I was already doing some things in preparation for it. I had changed my diet a number of years before this incident to become vegetarian. I had started going out to Taos, New Mexico, and I kept going out there, and that's a very energetic place. You don't find a lot of money managers out there, but, I kept going out there. I didn't know why. There were several things that were happening lifestyle-wise that, when I think about it, were probably forerunners to this big event happening. So I think the universe was preparing me all along. They were kind of greasing the wheels. And then I had this big event, and then I had to deal with the big event, and it was kind of forced on me. I was like, no, I don't really want this. No, thank you. It was like, this is what you got. Once I had this experience in this class, and as I said, I went out to Taos, New Mexico, and it was out there that I really unpacked that energy, because being in a place like Taos, where it's a very energetic environment, there's a lot of psychics, and there are a lot of artists and writers and musicians, and it's just very common out there to be like that. I became desensitized. It's not like being in Washington, D.C., where people say, what do you do? And you say, I'm a psychic. And then they would look at you funny. But in Taos, everybody, when you tell them you're a psychic, they say, yeah, me too.
How have you seen what you do be helpful for people, and for whom? Is this only for some people, or is this for everybody?
When I'm doing my work, I am just doing my work. Like a doctor, a patient comes to the doctor and says, this is what's going on. And the doctor thinks, what could be this? Maybe I should try that. What can you bring out from your toolkit? And that's sort of what I do. And it's not really up to me anyway, because the universe brings in this information and I'm just the carrier, the transmitter. So I just, tell them whatever is coming in for their greatest good. And I'm just the vessel, really. I never know when a reading is over exactly how much I help. Sometimes people don't say anything in readings, which makes it kind of hard for the psychic, because if you don't get any feedback, you don't know if anything you're telling them makes any sense to them. Be just like going to a doctor and the doctor says, how's your foot feel? And they say, So making them guess doesn't further anything. So I don't always know at the end of a reading if I help them or not. Sometimes they say I do. Sometimes they don't say anything. But I do get emails from people, or they do tell me later, you helped me so much, you have no idea. I hear that a lot. You have no idea how much you helped me. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And again, I don't remember, necessarily what I told them, but it's funny. You said you listened to that tape of the reading that you and I did, and I don't remember any of those either, but I was reading for someone a couple of weeks ago. This is kind of a famous person. And he said to me, I listened to the tape of the reading all the time. And this was like from 5 years ago. And I was like, wow. It just floors me when people tell me that, but they are finding it helpful. So that means that I'm doing my job, right? The universe has a job in mind for me to transmit the light and to help people. And so that means that I'm doing it. Now, is it for everybody? I have to think that it's for the people who are seeking it. There are probably a lot of people out there who could use help, but they don't come. And maybe they don't come because they're not supposed to come right now, or they're supposed to go to somebody else, or, it's not their time, whatever. When people show up for readings, a lot of times I'll ask them why they decide to come for a reading. And some percentage of people say, I don't know, I just felt drawn to you. It's always interesting because when we get into the reading, we usually find out why. There's usually something that's going on in their life that somehow, I have information about. I think those who are supposed to have this are kind of led by the universe, in this direction.
As you were talking, there was some insight even coming in and some parallels with what I do. I see folks for energy medicine. After a session, people are like, I don't know how I feel. Some people had really grand experiences and can say, wow, right away. But it's when they email you, or when they reach out on a Facebook message and say, you know what, I'm really feeling XYZ and thank you. So I'm seeing some parallels there. And I would never call myself a psychic or a medium, but there is some aspect of channeling energy. And that's what I'm doing. I'm channeling energy through my body. And you do get information when you're doing that, when you open yourself up to that. And again, it is the people who come through the door. It's the people who are seeking. You can't necessarily advertise this stuff. The people that come to you are drawn to you in some way. And I've also had people walk through the door and say, I don't even know how I found you. I really don't, but I'm here. So let's go. It's interesting how this kind of work can just happen like that.
It's the law of attraction.
Yeah.
The law of attraction, and, people will tell me, and maybe you've had this as well, that they go online and they're kind of just looking around and they look at websites and then they see mine and they say, she's the woman.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. But, I have to assume they're open enough that when that, it clicks, they're like, okay, they accept it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've definitely experienced that too. So Debra, how are you working with your gifts now? What does your kind of day-to-day look like? You recently wrote and published a book.
Yes, I wrote a book called Life After Near Death, Miraculous Stories of Healing and Transformation in the Extraordinary Lives of People with Newfound Powers. That book is about near-death experience after effects. I was actually led into that as well. I was asked in 2013 to read for a famous NDE or near-death experiencer in Washington, D.C. And this person had a near-death experience and came back with some unusual gifts that he didn't have prior to the experience. When I read for him, I was seeing some very unusual symbols because psychics see things in symbols. And that night I went home and I started thinking about these gifts he had and why he had them and what was he supposed to do with them. So I Googled NDE after effects and I saw that there hadn't been any research done. And I decided I would do the research. That's how the book came about. And I ended up interviewing and reading for all the cases in the book. I talked to a universe of about 50 people who had near-death experience after effects. And then some of the more interesting cases are in the book. When I wrote that book and when I first started doing the research, there really wasn't much interest in near-death experience after effects. Now it's becoming part of the conversation. See, I used to be in the investment business and I was always the person out in front, with here's a great idea. And they'd say, well, we don't understand why this is a good idea. Right. And then, 2 or 5 years later, it'd be like, oh, okay. So that's what's kind of happened with this too. So now near-death experience after effects are the topics of a couple major conferences, and it's becoming part of the conversation. There still hasn't been that much research done, but I came from Wall Street. I was a money manager, but for the first 10 years, I was a healthcare research analyst. So I had done classical research and had focused specifically on healthcare and actually very early stage companies where there wasn't a lot of research available. So I had to kind of do the pick and shovel work myself. So I knew how to do this. I like to think that I'm different from other psychics and mediums because I do have this left brain ability, and I do have a background, not only on Wall Street, but I was a professor at Hopkins and a commentator on CNBC and a few other hats that I wore too. And I like to combine my background with my abilities as a psychic and a medium, right? So, there's a lot of questions out there that we don't know the answers to. And it occurs to me, well, why wouldn't I use my abilities both left and right brain to try to research some of those. So I'm a psychic and a medium who does research. I can use my background and my ability to see beyond the visible to learn some things. Now, not everybody's going to agree with them, but still, I feel like hopefully it'll be useful at some point. One thing that I'm working on now is I work as a death doula. Death doulas sit bedside at hospice with people who are actively dying. I knew this was something that I wanted to do. I knew that I wasn't afraid of being with people who were close to death because I talked to people who were dead all the time. So it was something I wanted to do. As time has permitted, in the last few years, I've been working on a book about that, and I'll have more news to share about that soon. I hope the book will be out in 2018. Diary of a Death Doula, 25 Lessons the Dying Teach the Living. Because, there's a lot more going on when people are near death than what we see. Most people are afraid when they come to hospice, family and friends, they see someone lying in a bed who looks like there isn't much left of the physical body, and it's scary. But if you're able to pull back the curtain, there's actually a lot more going on, and it's a very different picture. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer, but I do use my abilities to plumb some other areas. And I also do readings. I do psychic readings. I do mediumship readings. I do healings. I do energy clearing. A lot of the people I read long distance for by Skype because energy is non-local, so they don't have to be in front of me. So I read for people all over the world. What else am I working on? I'm an artist. That's another expression of vibration. So I'm always working on an art project. I think most of what I do, though, is really aimed at helping others and distributing the light. And I feel like if I can do that, then I'm of service.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that. I didn't know some of that. I didn't know that you were a death doula, and I'm excited for your next project. The law of attraction came up again while you were talking. It's clear that I was attracted to you because I was and am, very left-brained, that like your story attracted me because it's similar, because I was a researcher for so long. And people are probably drawn to my practice because I have a master's in public health, even though, I don't really work in that anymore. I really love that theme. It sounds like you have all this amazing stuff going on right now, which is really exciting. How can folks learn more about what you do?
They can contact me. I have two websites, DebraDiamondAuthor.com and DebraDiamondPsychic.com. I also have several Facebook pages. One is for my book, Life After Near Death, where we share news about near-death experiences and near-death experience after effects. I also have a Facebook page, Debra Diamond Psychic. They can go on my website and sign up for my newsletter. That's a good way to keep up. And of course, if they'd like to have a reading, they can contact me through my websites as well.
Debra, I am so thrilled. Thank you. I love talking to you. I love hearing your story. And this is a lot of really rich information. I'm really grateful to you.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, Renata. And always great to see you and see you doing so well. So thank you.
Thank you.
I so enjoyed my discussion with Debra Diamond. It was amazing to reconnect with her. I'm so grateful for her taking the time to talk to us today.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find out more about Debra and her work via her website, DebraDiamondPsychic.com, and can get her book, Life After Near Death, via booksellers such as Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Like what we're doing and want to support our show? Join with all the other lovely humans that have signed up on our Patreon. Search for Let's Get Metaphysical on Patreon or visit our website for more information. Let's Get Meta is a production of the Hana Healing Arts Network. The show's host is Renata Maniaci. Audio editing and production by Zoe Ravenwood of Hatfish Digital Media. The voice of the credits is me, Aries. This episode's music was Reconnect by Adriana Crickle. Thanks for listening.